All right, welcome to the playback of the Private Data and Prying event held in Madison. Again, my name is Paul Hager, CEO of Information Technology Professionals. We have offices here in Madison, Milwaukee, and in the Appleton Fox Valley area. So questions we're going to answer today is who's writing all these viruses? Why do they do it? Is antivirus enough? And how do we keep your corporate data safe? And how do I keep my family safe? So stay tuned. At the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about some of my personal tips that I give to friends and family about how to keep your data safe and your privacy secure while you're computing online. So a brief vocabulary lesson. I won't read through all of this, but some terms that we'll use throughout the day. A rootkit is a virus that provides unauthorized access to a remote system, so that they can literally move your mouse or access data on your machine. A Trojan is a piece of software that looks like it's correct and normal, when in fact it's actually bringing in bad things. Ransomware is a virus that's used to demand payment before they will undo a certain bad action. A botnet is a network of infected computers, so a group of computers tied together with a virus will actually be used to send out more viruses, spam, or denial of service attacks. DDoS, denial of service, are volumes of junk traffic to prevent all the good stuff from getting through. So if you can imagine targeting ESPN.com with a bunch of bad requests from a large number of hacked machines, I mean, they'll have to spend more money on bandwidth and server and compute platform in order to handle what is essentially fake workload. So to start with the brief history of spam, we start with, or history of security, we start with the first biggest threat to security, which was spam. It was invented in 1978, not long after the internet itself was invented. The name does come from Monty Python. So there's this Monty Python skit where a group of gentlemen come into a restaurant and just keep ordering spam. And there's a chorus that kind of sings spam repeatedly in the background, drowning out any ability to hear anything else. And that's where the term comes from, is drowning out good email with a whole bunch of bad emails. It really grew in the 1990s and the early 2000s, and it primarily existed in that window to sell adult content and access to online pharmaceuticals. One of the largest botnets, called the Zeus botnet, was using an ISP on the West Coast, and that botnet and that ISP were taken down ultimately in 2008. The takedown of the Zeus botnet was believed to have reduced the amount of spam occurring globally by 80% in that single day after that single venture. But they reinvented themselves and lived on. So the only way that we were able to finally get rid of online pharmaceuticals in these companies was actually through Visa and MasterCard. If you think about it, the only way to actually take an illegal online transaction for an illegal or legal drug being shipped into the U.S. illegally would be eventually to pay by credit card. That's how we transact a large portion of our business online. And so those in the business figured that it was a lot harder to chase down these people using what are called bulletproof servers or bulletproof data centers and ISPs, meaning that they were housing their data in data centers that were overseas, were in Russia, in non-extradition, non-subpoena answering type foreign sites. So Visa and MasterCard ultimately were who were targeted, or the banks that were processing the transactions. And so a research study went out and they used individual prepaid credit cards and made purchases online for online pharmaceuticals and other transactions, and then just watched using tracers in these cards where that money eventually landed from a banking standpoint. And this is the chart that shows that these 30-some banks were ultimately identified as taking a vast majority of all of those online transactions. So with under pressure, Visa and MasterCard had to start enforcing their terms of service, which say in the fine print that if you are a processor of credit cards, you can't be transacting illegal activities and you can't take credit card transactions for anything illegal. And because of that, Visa and MasterCard shut down their ability to be payment processors, shut down these banks as valid vendors for Visa and MasterCard, and that took down online pharma pretty quickly. And that's why you're seeing less spam. Not only has the technology gotten better, but the main driver for spam at the time to sell you stuff online that was illegal has mostly gone away. So now what? These companies didn't just say, oh, well, who cares about this multi-billion-dollar industry? they had to reinvent themselves. They had to reinvent themselves in another, more clever way. So what they found is to use spam to bring viruses and ransomware in, or to make your computer part of a botnet that it can resell access to. How do these people transact now that Visa and MasterCard is out of the picture? They do it in a new currency called Bitcoins. So bit mining, you can see a picture here of a rack of servers. If you have extra servers lying around at home, you can become a bit miner as well. Bitcoins are a fake online currency which was invented. It has no actual value or backing by any bank. So if tomorrow everybody decides that they don't want to buy or sell Bitcoins anymore, they'll have no value. So it's not a secured transaction, not something to go to your financial planner and run off and try to do. But what it allows you to do is transact these fake currency back and forth, and there are even sites called bit mining sites where you can take your 2 Bitcoins, throw them in a pool with 20 other people who throw in 2 Bitcoins. You shuffle those Bitcoins around and you take 2 different ones back out. And in that way you've laundered or anonymized this online fake currency. And you get to these sites, there are valid Bitcoin sites and valid.coms, but the way that bit mining and a lot of these transactions are done are on what's called the Darknet, which you access via the Onion Router Network or the Tor browser at torproject.org. Now, keep in mind, if you find yourself searching for the Tor project and downloading this tool, you're probably going to end up on one of NSA's watch lists. Not that we all aren't, but it is something that both good and white hat and black hat people use. So it's a browser that connects you through another computer in a peer-to-peer arrangement that anonymizes all the traffic that you're using. So instead of a VPN, it's essentially security by obscurity. There are encrypted links between systems, and there's so many systems in the chain that you can't possibly follow all the hops, and your traffic is spread out. Because of that, your traffic can't be identified independent of other people's traffic on that same router. And in that way, you're anonymized when you're on the internet. And why haven't the government shut this down? It's because they want to be able to go to these websites and find out where all these bad things are happening. So where is it sold is a common question. Where, if my identity or credit card is stolen, where is that information sold? And it's on the Darknet in these forums where people just post, here you can see cheap, fresh CVV dumps, full info, etc. That's a group of credit cards that have hit the market. When you look at recent breaches at like Target and Home Depot, these are organizations that didn't come forward first and say, hey, we've had a breach, we're really sorry, here's what we're doing to fix it. What happened first is that journalists and white hat security experts like myself went online and found large volumes of new fresh credit cards hitting the market in mass in the millions. And what some security researchers do then is they purchase some of these identities and cards and they run credit reports on them. And they find the common accounts. And in this case, they found that everybody that was in that dump had Home Depot or had Target credit cards. And that's the way you start to figure out and track back who might have the breach. And then you go public with it, and that public pressure causes the company to react. And the government does the same thing. They use these websites to track terrorist groups. They use these websites to track illegal activity as best they can. $80,000 new viruses are written every day. It's impossible to keep up. No antivirus is going to keep you safe from that. We subscribe to the same theory that a company called CrowdStrike does, that you need to focus on the adversary, focus on the people who are actually creating the viruses. So there are about 65 adversaries that are actually active crime syndicates that are involved in the act of creating viruses and doing cyber warfare. 36 of those being the most active, and really only 4 making up a majority of the activity. There's been a real increase in ransomware. It's been more effective. Again, they can demand ransom in Bitcoins. There's been an increase in sophistication. We'll talk about that when we talk about Cryptolocker. There's been an increase in targeting of point-of-sale systems, looking for credit card track data. So track data is called Track 1, Track 2 is the data sets inside of your credit card. So you can go online, buy a $20 Magnatech credit card reader. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing illegal. USB credit card readers are used in a vast majority of point-of-sale units that you transact when you give your credit card to a waiter or waitress, what they swipe. But it's important to note that that's not a very fancy piece of technology. That swiper is merely just reading the magnetic strip. That magnetic strip contains your name, the CVV code, the date, and your full credit card number. And it inputs it in a kind of copy and paste style into whatever's on that screen. So if a virus gets on that point of sale unit, not only is it going to potentially just be able to screen grab all of that information, but certainly if it's watching the memory of the computer, it's going to get all those digits. And so these viruses just check the memory for these series of strings. There's also phone scams on the rise. People calling from 1-800 numbers or Connecticut saying they're calling from Microsoft or such and such tech company and they're here to fix your computer. They're here to help. They're here to remove a virus from your machine. You can watch a number of hilarious YouTube videos of security experts like myself taking these phone calls, bringing people into isolated virtual environments, and having them perform their evil deeds, which is usually a bunch of trickery on the screen, opening up DOS prompt, typing in a bunch of commands to tell you you have a virus when in fact you don't, and then they go ahead and actually install a virus on your machine and charge you for removing it. Viruses are causing a lot more damage than ever. We used to be able to comfortably tell our clients 10 years ago, don't worry about your data, it's safe. If you get a virus, it's going to mess up the machine, but it's not going to hurt your data. That's just not true anymore. We're seeing examples of data being deleted, any server you're connected to, data being deleted or encrypted or replaced or hidden, and really doing more and more damage. It's important to note that a lot of these attacks really focus around major end-of-life and end-of-support dates. So these aren't just marketing tactics from Microsoft to get you to buy new. When XP and when Server 2003 here in July reach end of life, these are serious events, and the security industry and the people on the wrong side of the law here in security know the end of life for Server 2003 is coming. They found vulnerabilities. They're not reporting it. And they're not using them. They're waiting until it hits end of life so that Microsoft won't create any more patches. And then they're going to wreak havoc on this operating system because they know it's still widely used. XP and Server 2003 are still widely used among corporations, and it only takes one inside of an environment to get you in, and then you can hop from that machine to regular and more patched machines. You just need that one to be your entry point sometimes. So it's really important to pay attention to those and get that stuff out, even if it's that one computer in the back that you say that nobody ever uses. Those are great examples of machines that get targeted fairly easily. So the last 12 months have been obviously in the news a lot around security. We had the breaches at Target, Sony, Home Depot. And here's a great, from informationisbeautiful.net, a great visual on how many accounts and identities have been compromised. Over 477 million in the last 12 months. Allows security analysts to say, most assuredly, your identity has probably already been stolen. It's just a matter of whether it's being used or not. You can't let that make you apathetic. It has to make you aware that this is a real problem, and companies need to do it, and we need to start holding companies accountable. Target really didn't flinch. They had to pay a large amount per record in fines to Visa and to PCI and several others, but there really wasn't a large-based consumer backlash. We've come to expect that our credit cards will get stolen, and we can't just accept identity theft as the norm anymore. But it is a reason to make sure that your kids have credit protection. If somebody takes your Social Security number and starts doing something silly with it, you're probably going to notice, but you're not going to notice your kids until they're maybe 18 and applying for their first car loan or something. And they're going to have horrible credit because they already had loans taken out and refused to be paid on and things like that. So it's important to add your kids to credit protection. Looking at Sony, on November 24th, everybody remembers that we had the announcement that Sony walked into the door to find their machines hacked, find their data being leaked, movies being issued, and then the high levels being issued blackmail threats. We're going to release this unless you pay this amount of money. We're going to release this unless you do that. We're going to give away all of your secrets. The lesser known part of Sony was actually the denial of service attack that occurred on their primary gaming servers right around the holiday season as well. It was executed by a group that called themselves online the Lizard Squad. What they had done was created a virus that was attached to spam emails and was sent to your parents and it enticed them to click on a link that it didn't seem to do much of anything, but what it did is it checked to see if your default gateway was a Linksys router using the generic admin password Linksys or admin. And if it did, it installed a virus on your router, not the machine. And it used this group of Linksys routers and directed fake traffic at Sony's servers enough that it actually caused the Sony system to go offline and people would not be able to game around the holidays, which is a pretty big deal. So why did they do that? Does this group Blizzard Squad have something against Sony? No. It wasn't like the hacktivists that had gone into Sony to make some sort of nationalist statement against maybe an upcoming movie. It was somebody that just wanted to make a name for themselves, and they did. And using that name, then they said that they had the same botnet available for hire for about $40 an hour to take down a competitor. The average cost for you to hire experts to come in and defend yourself against an active denial of service attack is around $40,000. The economics of scale aren't in our favor here. You can hire the bad guys for $40 to prevent the bad thing from happening, cost you $40,000. In this event, Blizzard Squad was believed to be headed up by a teenager out of the UK. Sony, Microsoft, and the U.S. government in combination believe that they found this person, again, by being on the Darknet, pretending to have identities in Darknet. The government is able to apprehend some of these folks by getting them to reveal things about themselves that eventually track back to an identity. So when we talk about the adversary, this is what we're talking about. You can see all the funny names, Panda, 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 Jackal, Tiger. And that relates to what country they come from. So this is the observed adversary activity during 2014. You can see a majority of it coming from Panda or China. You can see, like I said before, about 4 of the threat actors are responsible for over 50% of all activity. An adversary is typically an organization that has either got a criminal background, they were dealing in drugs, and now they do cybercrime, which seems kind of funny, or you might seem like that doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it, our laws are set up very well for what we do. If we find somebody bringing in 20 kilos of cocaine into the United States or into a state, we don't have well thought out what the penalties are for a denial of service attack taken against Sony servers. So because of that, these criminals are smart. They're choosing to take on jobs that still result in money, but result in money with less risk involved. There's hacktivists, people who just want to hack in order to be able to make a statement about something. They're state-sponsored. The United States has state-sponsored proactive cybercrime units. We were responsible for taking down one of Iran's nuclear facilities and recently declassified documents that you can read about. We installed a virus in the USB thumb drive, brought it into their highly enriched uranium facility that was enriching uranium in order to make it weapons grade. This virus was placed inside their network in order for them, for the virus to record what normal operations looked like for 6 months. On 6 months and one day, it flipped a switch and started playing back on their screens 6 months of normal operation. And then in the background was actually triggering the command and control systems for these uranium enrichment units to actually slowly spin too fast or spin too slow or over-enrich or do something that would cause it to destabilize and ultimately shut down. Because of this attack, it's believed that the United States has been able to set back Iran's nuclear program by several years because of how much uranium was lost in that process. And likewise, lots of stories about China and other groups doing it as well. You don't hear about in the news a lot, because again, the government doesn't want to overly worry you or scare you that cyber criminals are very active, when in fact they are fairly active on a daily basis. One of the stories that you'll see Obama reference in a speech but then quickly kind of get edited and censored out is in Brazil, there was a power company that was hacked, and power shut down for an entire city for 3 days while they had held that power company ransom before they would bring the power back online. Something that's not talked about a lot, but there was actually a price spike in steel because one of the largest steel producers came out of that factory. It was in Brazil, in that city. And without power, they couldn't operate their business, costing them millions of dollars. And there's, of course, nationalists. You see we have the Russia-Ukraine debate. We have China and Vietnam arguing over water rights in the ocean. Wherever there is geopolitical strife, technology is used as a offensive and defensive weapon, and it follows. Whenever there's a major political battle, in a foreign country, a very hotly contested vote. We're seeing voting machines. We're seeing these type of national events co-opted by cybercrime as well. So you'll see here in 2014, it wasn't the United States that led it, was Vietnam. And again, that's because China and Vietnam are in a disagreement over an oil facility that's pulling oil out of the ocean that Vietnam put in that China believes to be on their part of the ocean. So they were highly targeted in 2014. Then, of course, the United States. The most active malware we'll talk about is something called PlugX, which exploits a vulnerability in the Microsoft Office and Windows XP suite. So PlugX comes from CVE, Common Vulnerability, is what that stands for, 2014-17061. So CVEs are released nearly every day for exploits that are found in software by the United States government. You can sign up for the CVE list, and every day you'll have less and less confidence in the applications you're using. The one thing that is interesting, if you do sign up for it, is I think it helps displace the notion that it's just Windows that has the issue. Notice that every day there's issues with Apple products, there's issues with iOS, there's issues with Flash and Java, and many more technologies than just Windows alone. So PlugX has become as simple as you can actually, as an attacker, you can go on the Darknet and find a tool that you can download, take any virus, take any Word document, hit go, and it'll merge the two together. Attach that virus to that Word document. So if you send it to somebody and get them to open it, it's going to run a macro that's going to install that virus in that backdoor for you right away. So PlugX has been out there for a while. Uses this vulnerability known inside of Windows for some time. Cryptolocker or Cryptowall, a lot of people have had experience with and has really grown since June of 2014. The Zeus botnet in 2014 was one of the primary botnets delivering Cryptolocker originally. It used to use command and control servers with botnet, and those command and control servers are part of what was taken down. Now in the latest versions, Cryptowall is what's called polymorphic, meaning that it's actually able to adapt on the fly. The software is written so intelligently that as it leaves links to various websites where you can find your instructions for paying your ransom, it will self-check and find if that website's been taken down for some reason. It actually has the code to go buy a new domain name, set up new hosting at another bulletproof server site, and post a brand new page all on its own. So it's self-acting, self-reacting to keep itself alive. It doesn't need command and control servers anymore to run it. It's able to hold the encryption keys on its own and keep track of where those keys are and keep track of what domains it's using to give ransom all on its own. We've also seen some of the latest versions actually locks the computer screen. So in previous iterations, you'd still be able to use your computer as normal, and that was primarily so that you could still get to your file share. It's just in every one of your folders and your file shares on your server, you notice a file there for instructions on how to pay the ransom. Now it's just a screen that locks you out, shows you where to pay the ransom, and you're not able to do anything. Booting into safe mode doesn't fix it. There's no way to stop it other than to wipe the machine or to pay the ransom. And again, antivirus won't catch this. I know this is a long slide, but I just like to walk people through the anatomy of what we do on the ethical hacking side of our business. What do we do if we're going to put ourselves in the mind of somebody trying to create an intrusion on your in your business? So one of the first things we're going to do is something called footprinting. We're just going to do our research on who you are and what your company is. So maybe we're trying to, one of our competitors, somebody's paying us to go after a competitor in the technology space, somebody who's patenting active new technologies. I'm going to go online, I'm going to find what law firm is filing for them on the patent side. I'm going to look up that law firm name. I'm going to use the DNS whois and website to find out where they host their website, where they host their email. I'll be able to find via whois what their SMTP servers are, and maybe what their remote access is. You know, a lot of companies use remote.their domain or VPN their domain to hit their firewall or to hit their server. I'm just going to write down as much as I can about what we can find about where their network touches the wide internet. Then we're going to use a tool built in to Linux and to a lot of systems called Nmap, and we're going to scan and enumerate those open ports. We're going to find out what kind of data is coming out of their firewall and on what ports we're going to do it. So once we find what websites they expose, what surfaces they have, what ports they have open, we're going to try to do sniffing. We're going to try to brute force. We're going to try to penetrate in through that firewall and maybe go in through a normal port and then move over. We're going to try to send spear phishing emails to key people. We're going to find out on LinkedIn who key people are, and we're going to send spam emails that are going to target them to try to get a virus into the network. Once we're in, we're going to try to escalate privilege. So maybe we get in, but we only get into some low-level employee's computer. We're going to use known exploits, look for Windows XP machines to try to work our way up, find that administrative or domain administrative password. Then we're going to gather as much information as we can along the way and reuse that to steal data. Next thing we're going to do as we go along is every server that we touch, every machine that we get into, we're going to try to delete log files and hide the tools that we're using to let ourselves back in. If nothing else, we're going to make sure we create backdoors so we can more easily get inside that network in the future. If all else fails, we're just going to get angry. We're going to flood the outside of your firewall with denial of service activity to bring you down. So these are the steps we're going to go through. And again, this takes less than 1 to 4 weeks, typically an average for us to go from a targeted company to being able to get in. One of the other statistics we tell people about is that average time to detection is 271 days. You can tell just by the slide that I gave you before how defined and how well thought out that process is. So many of our clients, people we talk to, the day that the virus finally gets so noisy that they realize something's really wrong in their machine and they call us, everybody tries to tell themselves, well, this must be the first day it was there because it's the first day I noticed it. In reality, they've probably already been in the network, been in your machine, watching, key logging, doing all sorts of nasty things. And it was only then that they got too robust and too verbose and ended up having a pop-up get in front of you that made you knew your computer wasn't running well. So again, the average from the time you found it, they've really already been in your network on average for 271 days. You can go to this really helpful website to tell you, based on your compliance requirements, the number of machines you have, the type of data you have, what you're likely to have to pay in fees from a breach standpoint. Noting that companies typically only have to let the world know about their breach if it's over 10,000 entries breached. So there's a lot of smaller breaches that are going on that we just don't know about. Sorry. This is just an enterprise problem, right? Absolutely not. As a percentage of revenue, a single HIPAA or PCI fine can be far and worse than what Target experienced for a small business. We have examples of that. A small dental practice here in Madison had a patient information breach after a virus outbreak, and the HIPAA fine was well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. For an 11-person office, as a percentage of revenue, was far more damaging than what Target was. We had a couple commercial business examples here in Madison the last year. Virus got on a CFO's machine, keylogged for months, what their bank account information was, what their logins to the bank were, and eventually tried to execute a failed foreign wire transfer. Another example, people compromised an email account of a CEO, used the conversation going between him and a realtor that was active to send a fake email to convince the CEO to execute a foreign wire transfer out of his bank account as well. On a much larger scale, we've seen examples in 2009 where Coca-Cola was trying to make an acquisition in China of the Huiyan Juice Group. China found out about it, and their government nationalist cybercrime division went out and spearphished the CFO with this email, supposedly from the CEO, with the title of "Save Power is to Save Money." Gave hackers the full access to their CFO's computer, and using that, watched all of Etchel's communications, the CFO, and was ultimately able to kill that deal, costing Coca-Cola millions of dollars in a failed acquisition. So when we say a firewall and antivirus isn't enough, what we mean is that you need threat intelligence, that you will be breached, but it's more about how quickly you can respond to that. We need new tools in order to do that. And ITP has those tools. We have a security practice. We can help you assess, remediate, and provide ongoing protection against these cyber threats. We can help you come in line via assessments around PCI DSS, HIPAA, SOX, NIST, and FISMA. if you don't have a specific requirement, we're going to use NIST-4 or NIST. We're going to use their steps of categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor to go through and catalog your information systems, compare them against best practices, security standards, and provide you with remediation options so that you can know what to do next. And maybe your business is small enough that it won't need to take a lot of control actions, but at least you'll know and you'll have gone through that process. So some of my personal security tips: again, purchase credit monitoring for your children. Don't use Google. It seems really helpful, but Google and Google Chrome is in the business of reselling your personal information. That's how Google makes money, right? That's why Google is free and Gmail is free. It's because they're analyzing data about you to present you with advertising that makes them money. So go ahead and change to DuckDuckGo.com as your search engine. They have a promise to never track or never use cookies and never show you your personal information. Talk to people all the time who say, it's so great when I'm browsing online, all the ads are so tailored to what it is that I need. And it seems like when I go to this product website, then when I'm on Facebook, it shows me those same ads, which is creepy. Well, yeah, it's creepy. And what it's doing is that means that you're sharing enough personal data on your browser history. The sites you're going on are leaving enough cookies behind that advertisers are using that to contextualize their ads. It means that more data is out there about you than what you probably want. If you are traveling, you should almost always use a VPN. Use your personal hotspot. Don't use public Wi-Fi. If you don't have access to ability to encrypt your traffic easily, there's a company called IPVanish, which just has a personal VPN solution. If you don't have a corporate network, you can launch this. At least your data will be encrypted and look like gobbledygook to anybody who might be sniffing on the network. On your mobile devices, on Google devices, make sure to check the option to have your device encrypt itself. That means it'll have a password on boot as well as password on lock. Apple devices are inherently encrypted, any newer iOS device, but you have options in iOS to enable privacy protections. You can actually have, there's security settings on your default iPhone or iOS device that says track me less and turning off of location-based services. You have to ask yourself, is it worth not having to type in what zip code you're in? Is that convenience worth your phone being able to track where you are and share that data with a multitude of people and vendors willing to pay for it? Don't ever use public Wi-Fi. Been on CBS, have done sting operations and examples of how easy it is for man-in-the-middle attacks when there's unsecured public Wi-Fi available in coffee shops to get your data. So just don't use them. Use your hotspot on your phone. Use your corporate data plans, or make sure you execute a VPN. One of the other questions that came up after this presentation when it was happening live was if I had any suggestions on passwords and password management. And what I let people know there was there's a free program called KeyPass, which is a program that encrypts all your password information, allows it to generate passwords, and it'll input them into forms and websites for you. And this way you're not actually using the keyboard to type in your password, and that makes it a lot more secure. And then your password list is inherently encrypted. I'd rather you write all your passwords down on a piece of paper than leave them in an Excel file or Word document on your desktop called passwords, because more than likely they're going to get into your machine and they're going to look for any extra credentials they can find on it. It's part of that enumeration step. The other thing you can do is a web service which you pay for that's called LastPass, LAST and that service has a lot of value. Allows you to save your online accounts and information into there using more secure passwords, and again, it'll autofill them for you in a secure way. So thanks for watching the playback. Please come out to us to the next Madison After Work or Milwaukee After Work Network event. We hope to have valuable topics and some free beer, and we hope to hear from you or see you soon. If you have any questions, reach out to us at itprosusa.com. Thanks.